My reason behind this presentation was that when I looked at BCS and myself, there's sort of a 60-year overlap actually in what we did. So I thought I'd reflect and look at me in cartography and BCS. I've called it from AI to AI. So what I'm really talking about is this movement from analog instruments to advancing innovations. And what my presentation will be is a cartographic journey, basically BCS and me, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, lessons learned on the way, and make some concluding remarks. So I'll start off in around about 1963. So this is sort of my image of Britain, 63. I think Australia might have run the test that year. That's why I popped that in. Anyway, sorry. And so around about also 1963, we have this group. And as you well know, in 63, the BCS comes up. So in the 1960s, from an Antipodean perspective, this is the news we get out of Britain. It's rockers versus mods in Brighton Beach, is that correct? But I thought also to win most British hearts over, I'd throw this one in the 60s. And I'm sure it wins the audience over. So we have in the 1960s. So what I've done, I've looked at what the Cartographic Journal was talking about in the 60s, and I go through. And I look at issue number 1, 1964. What was being talked about in the Cartographic Journal is the portrayal of relief, charting, globes, and electrofacts, colour map copier, cartography coming out as a university discipline, use of typography, and also a Gaelic map of Scotland. That's me about the same time as well. I'm in high school. I'm in what was Form 4. And in the Australian school system, in Form 4 was when you made the decision whether you move into the sciences or to the humanities. So I did geography in Form 4. My first encounter with geography, that's why I'm trying to make that link, it wasn't good. And my problem was this AB versus the AB line. We had a geography teacher. She took us on a field trip, and we had to actually draw a contour line from a map. And on the map that I handed in for assessment, I had A and B on the drawn map. And in my written report, I had A in inverted commas, B in inverted commas. The teacher took my report, ripped it up and said it's wrong. So she didn't tell me why, but I did it again. She said it's still wrong because I had the A to B on the map and the A, B on the report. For me, geography ended. In 1963, I didn't go near it again until I entered the war. So that's me in geography. Ended. Okay. So I go into the 1970s, and there must have been something in the water in Britain in the 70s. Everyone's waving their hands about. And I don't know why. So if I move now onto the 70s, I look at the Cartographic Journal. It's now talking about automation. It's talking about automation and education. It's about how do we represent relief. It's about photomechanical techniques and also some historical cartography as well. So for me, I now move into the workforce and I begin drawing the map. 67, I'm using a computer to do survey computations. The computer's in a separate room, nice spot to be during the middle of summer in Australia. It's the only air-conditioned building in the room in the building. So I enter the workforce and I'm drawing maps. Maps then are hand-drawn onto linen, which moved to plastic. And the transitions were basically pen and ink to computer-assisted cartography into mini computer, And I think when we move out of that era, things that I see that were abandoned, unfortunately, was the act of being close to the drawing. You're actually drawing that stuff. I remember drawing actually some maps for exploration when I had to draw a creek in the middle of nowhere in Australia, and to make it look more creekish, I just wobbled my hand a bit as I was drawing that creek. It was in the middle of nowhere. They're going to dig a big hole to dig minerals out. Who cared if the creek that wasn't there in the wet season, dry season, was a bit more wiggly than it should be. So basically, I see this era, it's all about printing. You either draw the map by hand and print it, you use photomechanical production and print it, or finally computer production and print it. So it's the era of the print. I think what I got out of this was the appreciation of materiality. You were using this stuff, you were feeling this stuff. It was about tactility. And also, I think it's about designability versus productability. What I mean by this is that you knew what you could draw and you didn't design what you couldn't draw, if that makes sense. So you sort of did limit your design a bit, because if you couldn't draw it, you didn't design it. I think after we moved out of this era, what was lost was that appreciation of materiality, of tactility, of being more flexible. And I think what we lost was the drawing, that it was abandoned. I'll move into the 70s. And I think the 70s in Britain is about hair, I think. So 70s and 80s. So what about the Cartographic Journal? What was it talking about in 1980, issue 1? It was about a national atlas done by computer. It was strategies for making cartography real time. How do I get into computer mapping, visual matching, and computer output to microfilm? So we moved well and truly into the era of computer mapping. So with me, I was involved in, it's actually also the year of hair. I had a fair bit then, actually. Anyway, it was about interposing photographic film between drawing and the output of the map, that we use this other medium between our drawing it and producing it. We put this other stuff in the way, scribe code, peel code, or whatever. And I think basically what I got out of this was to become more experienced in photomechanical processing. I could operate a darkroom, I could do proofs, I could make printing plates, I could run a printing press. I ended up going out and upskilling my qualifications, not in cartography. I went to a printing school and I did a course in using electronic colour scanning that was produced by this German firm, Dr. Hell, and actually got me my first job in academia linked to this production using printing processes. But I think what was lost in this move to photomechanical production was that freedom to draw relatively unrestrained. We were restrained by the scribe codes, the peel codes, the layers, and so on. That freedom to move my hand around a bit to make it up was lost. If I now move into the 1980s, I taught in Britain in 85, 86 in Portsmouth, and that's my Portsmouth picture, and I was exposed to the BBC computer for the first time during those mid-80s. I was pleased to see the Cartographic Journal issue 284 happened to mention a postgraduate diploma program that we were running at RMIT at the time, and the Cartographic Journal was quite pleased that we were actually having automated cartography in curricula in cartography during that time. So this moves to the era of computers, computer cards, computer processing, and we start to use computers for survey computations, for drawing map projection grids. One unfortunate thing about programming, you learn all these languages and then you abandon them. I learned Algol, stopped. Fortran, stopped. Pascal, stopped. Prolog, stopped. And I used the Intergraph MicroStation, PCs, the Apple II, Macintosh, and the web. And I think the trouble with computers is everyone knew in those early days of computers, you spent a lot of time looking for that full stop that shouldn't be there. I don't know that bloody program, but anyway. So I think this era, it's all about computers and automation. We move from what was called computer-assisted cartography to the computer as a complete system. What did I get out of computer-assisted cartography? It was about the efficiency of algorithms. It was writing software to control a plotter. Basically, pen up, move the pen to here, put the pen down, move it to there, pen up, move, pen down, and draw. But also, I must say, I got a lot of knowledge from working with, at our university, Professor Pinhouse-Ualey, one of the pioneers of automated cartography, and fortunate to be able to work with him, and he made our automated system work. I think what was lost in this move to automated cartography, the direct drawing of the map by a person stopped. The computer intervened, and the human link between that imagined map and the physical map drawing ended completely. And then I moved to the late 1980s, 1990s in this particular era. The Cartographic Journal was looking at critical points of detection, automatic line generalization, raster data, and the application of video disc technology to mapping, which interested me. I moved into non-print media. I saw the Doomsday video disc then, and I thought I've got to do it. I went back home, I got some money from the university, and I produced an interactive video disc called the Queenscript Project. I made one glass master in 86. It cost £4,000 for one glass video disc master from Philips, and I had to produce a 1-inch video tape, send it to the UK to Philips. They made the video disc, and then I programmed it in Prologue to make that video disc work. So this was the results. Pretty clunky now, but I was pretty happy with this in 86. And then I used, you were saying before about software disappearing. I produced this in Macromedia Director. It's gone on a Macintosh. Oh, that's just how not to do it. What did I get from non-print going to multimedia? It's about assemblability, tactility, multiplicity, multimedia, multi-processes. You still had to program to make it work. It was integration of all the stuff. It was learning lessons from the graphics and video industry. It was upskilling my qualifications in doing some qualifications in media studies and information and communication technology and graphic art. I think multimedia was the last link to tactile media, the stuff you could actually get these photographs and manipulate them. It stopped. You could no longer actually get this stuff and manipulate it. But it did allow the multiple representational tech methodologies to be explored, and it did allow for cartographic multiplexing. I think during this era, we moved from hybrid print, audio, photo, maybe linked together somehow. We moved into hypermedia, into multimedia, and then into discrete media. I think for me anyway, 85 to 95 was that decade of interactive media that was really interesting, and I look at a lot of the lessons learned that I applied came out of that 10 years, 85, 95 of interactive media that we still use today. So if I move into the early 2000s, and it's not just bendy buses, it's other things. So if I look at the Cartographic Journal, issue 1, 2010, it's about cartography meets gaming. It's about navigating globes, block diagrams, 2D maps, gamepads, joysticks. So I thought I'd try out computer game engines. I used this game engine. I built, with apologies to the map curators here, I built a virtual map library in a Doom game engine. And I put the maps on the walls, and you could open doors and so on. I left the gun there. When the door opened and the map curator came out, I couldn't help it, and bang, there I went. So what I got from games engines was the ability to experiment with different presentation techniques. It was about exploring the potential of early games engines, and it was interesting. What was lost? Resolution, adios. Control over the image placement in the library in the game was really controlled by the game. Okay. So I moved to the 2000s. I'll go to the Cartographic Journal, issue, whatever it was, 2015. They talked about in this issue, refreshing cartography. It was cartography-oriented 3D, visualization techniques, better web mapping services, styling, style layers. It was about testing the usability of maps as well. That's what your journal was talking about. What was I doing? I thought I was interested in web hybrid and non-immersive web 3D. I got interested in producing hybrid products that linked CD-ROM based products with the web. I produced this for the Australian military called an EGO Brief Afghanistan, a hybrid CD-ROM project. I used VRML to produce this interactive map shop. You could actually move through in VRML, open drawers, interact with the maps. You open the drawers, found the map, clicked on the map, and I went to the web. I didn't shoot any map curators in this one. I used VRML to produce this one where we could test out different aspects of actually how dirty images needed to be more appreciated by users. And we found out that the map didn't have to be too dirty or look too realistic for them to be. I was looking at the trade-off between how much more time do you make to make them look more realistic compared to how realistic they should be to be usable. This era, you still had to code and script. It was similar to multimedia design. There was still a need for companion products, I found. What was lost? Freedom to design, you had to code. It was a compromised design, you had to work with what VRML could do, but it did give you some latitude as long as you could program it. I also was involved in a project on StoryMap, where with Ken Field, we produced this project called For King and Country about my great uncle who didn't survive World War One. Out of StoryMap, I think it's very similar to developing multimedia applications. It's a rich media. It gave me the ability to link web-delivered resources, to look at a simple build methodology, and it also gave me again the opportunity to be impressed by what Ken Field can do with a computer and history products. What I see was lost with things like story maps. The pure flexibility was lost. You had to link to the product. You had to fit with that to make it work. But I think what I got most of all, and I can't talk about now, is that I like to call engineered serendipity. I think what we're trying to show our users are something that they can, in a serendipitous way, just explore this data. But it's like a duck swimming on a lake. They look pretty calm, and the user can serendipitously go around their data. But underneath the water, there's all that code, all that data, all that grunt, making something that looks like a serendipitous way to move through data. The duck's legs are paddling like crazy under that water to give the user this serendipitous experience. So I think what we do, what we've done is we make geospatial artifacts. And we've made them in different ways, in many ways. I think what we do, we work with images, and those images we broadcast, we narrowcast them. The images can be moving, they can be still, they can be real, and they can be virtual. But we work with images. But we also work with technology to make those images work, and work, I think, in a serendipitous way. And we engineer these products to work in what appears to be a serendipitous way for our users. And what we do, we draw maps. And I quite like this paper from 1904 by Good and Darling. They said that we draw maps because geography deals primarily with space relation, and all record comes sooner or later to be able to show the distribution in a map. And they say the place for the atlas is in the head, and we need to define these mental pictures somehow. And they said that this is the study of the essentials and the exercise of the muscles in reproducing the form, train the attention, and fix a clear mental image. So In summary, what I think is in the mid-60s, we had paper maps that were drawn. We were involved in print, photomechanical processes. We drew and designed. The paper map was also the database. So the representation had the database drawn on there as well. If a change was made, the old data was crossed out and the new data drawn in next to it. And then we moved to digital, where we developed methodology. It was more efficient. It was a digital storage medium. And I see that this year we separated the representation from the database. Previously they were together, now they're separated. Then we moved to discrete media, interaction, multimedia, optical media, and using multiple devices. We moved to the internet. We can broadcast or narrowcast. It can be multimedia. We rely upon communication systems. We moved to Web 2.0. It's about deconstructing and constructing. It's about collaboration, but we depend on big tech. And that dependence and reliance on big tech can be our undoing, I think. With Web 3, big tech, a rethink of publishing, maybe we can actually sever that dependence on big tech and do things better. I called this presentation from AI to AI, so I thought I'd better do something with AI. I went to Chat GPT and I said, give me the British Cartographic Society in 3 words. And the 3 words I got was mapping, excellence, and community. So happy anniversary, BCS. Thank you.
Questions?
Just one. And that regards copyright. I spent 10 years broadly surveying other people, trying to find people who had copied maps unlicensed. It was a hell of a job because the people who had made the maps were using all the methods that you use. And I was having to learn them and then work backwards. So the question then is, how easy is it to get the copyright to do all the modern methods?
I'll answer your question in a roundabout way. I did some research. There was a map that popped up in Australia in 1939. It was a metro map of the Sydney underground system. And if you put that 1939 map next to the 1938 map of the London metro system, that small fold-out 3-piece one, they were identical. Even the font, on the verso where the map was, they were also identical. And when I did some research on that, they said with copyright in the Antipodes back in 39, they just didn't care about copyright. And this was actually printed for the New South Wales Railways Board. And so they had a private map contractor. The map contractor showed them this lovely map they could produce for the Sydney metro system. Good idea, let's just copy it. And I found that a lot of those things with copyright, when copyright doesn't translate so far down to the Southern Hemisphere, people did just copy them. Maybe it's an Australian attitude. No, who cares if someone's way out of the stump? Who cares basically what happens way down there? I think maybe, I'm not sure where I'm leading here. Sidetrack myself. I was quite interested in that. Anyway, but I'm interested in answering the question. I think you can easily copy now. So easy to copy. And how do you control it? I think in many countries they just let it run. And they made data open, and all that effort you made in tracking down these people for copying OS maps or data itself, you must feel quite frustrated now. All that work now, they just sort of let it go.
No.
You're not?
No, I think it's a matter of society. It's what the society wants, and then you make the law accordingly.
Okay. Maybe we think different down south.
One more question? Bill, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.